Welcome, dear brothers and sisters. Welcome to Dr. ETV. I am here today with one of my absolute favorite humans on this planet. Not just an incredible academic, but also a beautiful brother, beautiful brother, and a very, very conscious, loving man. This is Dr. Keith Motes, PhD in quantum physics. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Dr. Espen. Yeah, such a pleasure to be here with you, talking about consciousness and the bridge of science and spirituality.
What an interesting topic. So today we are going to dive deep into the workings of the universe and extract some golden nuggets out of how we can empower ourselves, how we can heal ourselves, how we can live an incredible life. And I think your story is just one of the things that fascinates me the most. I remember one of the first time I met you, and I didn't know who you were, and the kind of study that you had done in depth into this, things such as physics first and then into quantum physics. I just observed you as a person, and I am somewhat aware that I am aware, and I was aware of the energy that you brought to the place. You stepped up with tremendous presence, but it wasn't just presence, it was loving presence. Mm-hmm. And it was a very interesting experience. And I actually sat back and just observed you in your workings of moving through your body and your breath and what you were doing and connecting with the brothers and what you were doing at the time. And then when I felt into who you really were, I got excited, and then I learned what you had done in your life. And I guess that's why we're here, because when someone takes almost a decade out of their life to really study in depth how the universe actually works, and then has an opportunity to achieve the things that you've achieved and live in such a beautiful state, I think it's worth shooting the shit and working out what we can do to help other people, listeners and viewers, achieve magnificent things from a beautiful state. So welcome.
Definitely excited to share.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. I understand you basically spent a lot of your time in Louisiana in America. So maybe go through that in quick detail, and let's just dive into the goodies, shall we?
Yeah, sure. So born in South Carolina, moved to Louisiana at the age of 2. My dad working at a nuclear power plant as an operator. Kind of like Homer Simpson on The Simpsons.
Oh, that's awesome.
Grew up in a small town called St. Francisville, country town. Loved watching science documentaries about the universe and atoms and dinosaurs and just anything about nature and the way the universe worked. And as I grew up, high school math and physics were so easy and intuitive for me. Even though academia wasn't my favorite thing, it was sports, it was running, it was track and cross country, soccer. Then I went to university, and in this deep state of meditation, even before I did yoga, I was like, oh yes, I just had this epiphany that I want to study math and physics in university. It made sense, and I stuck to that ever since. Did it, made nearly perfect grades in university. Learned deeper about the mysteries of the universe through understanding the laws of physics and learning deeper levels of mathematics. And so, yeah, I did that. And one day, during this time, I went to Boston, Massachusetts. I did an internship in the engineering department of Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And at the time I was doing this and also still lifting weights at the gym, swimming, running, playing soccer. And I was living with this housemate that we started to have a little fling, a thing, very beautiful woman. And she got me into, guess what? Yoga.
Yoga, right.
I was like, what is this yoga thing? I'm like, I loved my body being physical. I always wanted to give it a go. The fact that I liked this beautiful human being who wanted to bring me along to her class, and I did, and I ended up falling in love with yoga, not the girl.
With yoga, not with the girl, but with the practice.
Yeah.
I love that. I think this journey is so powerful. I remember an old saying once, and I still laugh to this day. When people say, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible, right? I always say, well, that's like saying you're too dirty to take a bath.
Or too weak to go to the gym.
Yeah, or too weak to get. I don't have big enough muscles to go to the gym. It kind of defeats the purpose. And that is if we were to consider yoga the physical practice of the asanas. That's if we were to view yoga as a form of exercise instead of, well, the practice of consciousness. As far as I'm concerned, is that yoga means the union of the body, mind, and spirit. So how do you then, through academia, you're studying, and then you're falling into this practice of yoga? Tell us a little bit more about, the studies and the practice and how that unfolded for you as into where you are now and what you're doing. There's incredible things you're doing these days.
Yeah, so I got into yoga. I then had another year of university left, and I began practicing nearly every day. It was such a beautiful addition to my life, and I finished my degree in Louisiana, moved to Canada to do an internship where I kept doing yoga. I shared with my peers some yoga there. I was at the Institute of Quantum Computing doing an internship, and I wanted to do a PhD program after, but I wasn't sure where to go, and I just trusted that everything would work out. And sure enough, one fateful day, I got an email from my advisor, Jonathan Dowling, at Louisiana State University, saying, "Keith, how about a PhD in Sydney, Australia, at Macquarie University?" Because he had some connections, and I was just like, yes. Like, I felt into it. It took me about 1 second for my heart to just be like, that's a full yes, we're doing this.
Wow.
And a few months later, flew to Australia. Never thought I'd go do a PhD on the other side of the world.
Yeah,
which
wow.
was just
well, same thing with
surprise.
me. Same thing with me. This stuff found me as well. I'm born and raised in Norway. I had no idea I was going to end up here. But as you mentioned, earlier, that it kind of found you. And being aware of that, I think, is powerful. So for the listeners and viewers out there, I mean, can you tell us, we talk about quantum physics and the study, as far as I'm concerned, the study of how the universe actually works, and as I take it to a whole nother level, who we really are. Can you tell us a little bit about your takeaway on this? Like, you've done 9 years of academic studies and research.
Yeah.
And also I know a bit about you. I also know that you had 4 to 5 times the amount of publications during your PhD compared to the average student in Australia. I mean, how were you able to perform at a level that is way above average and study it for 9 years and still be able to, I mean, you were relaxed, you're present. Was it always like this?
Particularly when I started my PhD, because I was fully into yoga at this point. This was one of the big things that kept me A, productive, and B, relaxed and centered and grounded.
Productive?
It was my practice of yoga.
Wow.
Among other things, but that was a big factor, definitely. If I didn't have that, I would have probably been like all the other people in my realm at the time, all the other students. I didn't have that kind of spiritual practice. I would have been probably as stressed as them, as anxious, worried about getting enough work done.
Yeah, getting enough publications, will that be approved, all the stress,
the money, everything. I was doing yoga, and I was actually working less than most of my peers, in the sense that I would come in the office usually after everyone else and even leave earlier, and still about 4 to 5 times as many publications as your average PhD student in my field. And so that was one factor that that helped me achieve that. But another factor that was equally important was my focus of energy, not on just like trying to do it all myself, but on building a network of powerful scientists and well-connected scientists that I built really beautiful connections with. This was a huge part of it, as well as building this web and actually getting out and socializing with people, and not just being stuck in my cubicle like a lot of people were doing. This definitely helped me enormously also in being productive and getting all these publications. And by the way, 2 of those 14, I think it was, publications were published in the world's top physics journal in my field, which is a huge achievement for a PhD student. Like,
big time.
There's a lot of postdocs and even professors who haven't even got papers in this journal.
Yeah, wow.
So it's an honor, a blessing, and just fully surrendering and trusting that everything's from the right place, I'm doing the right thing, and not stressing about it.
So let's take some of these takeaways that you're mentioning, because the first thing you're talking about is, going through, 9 years of study, 3.5 years of intense study into a PhD, and mentioning that you're able to perform 4 and 5 times above the average person in that as a PhD candidate, but also live in a beautiful state.
Yes.
So if we're looking at that opportunity to perform above normal, to still be present time conscious, and to be in a beautiful state, we understand the practice of yoga is meaningful. So the question then is to the listeners and viewers, what does it mean for you to be present? What does it mean for you to live in a beautiful state? And how present and/or how much of the time have you been living in a beautiful state? I think that's an important question to ask ourselves, because the first path to self-mastery is self-discovery. We must first understand what's actually happening in our lives in order for us to potentially make a shift. Knowing that we're not so present or not so productive or not living in a beautiful state is a good start, so that we can begin to bridge that gap. And then you're mentioning, correct me if you want to add to it or if I'm incorrect, but you're mentioning the power of socializing here, of actually, how did I get all those publications through in such a short period of time? It wasn't just sitting behind a computer doing the work. And I would call it a mistake that I make, and that so many people make, and you might resonate with this, is that we try and get it all done, right? We always say, I'm just going to get it all done. I just need to do it all myself. Well, you take someone like Richard Branson, he owns 300 companies, and he reads a book 6 to 8 hours a day. And if you look at his social media, he spends a lot of time with his family and loved ones. So is it feasible, plausible, possible for us to perform at extreme levels, to really put incredible things out there and still live in a beautiful state? Well, you're an example of that. He's an example of that. And so the question is, what do we need to do in order to make that happen? You're talking about socializing and getting out to connecting with people, and then, creating that society and network. Well, that's all about, following Ricardo's law, the law of connecting and delegating to other people so that you don't have to do it all yourself. That's very powerful. So you're big on energy, right? As a quantum physicist, shall we go there?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. It's that time, right?
It's time.
Okay, so tell us now, so you're a quantum physicist, you've realized, before we get into that, what's your take on quantum physics? What is it? Who are we really? Who am I? Who are you? Who are we? What's going on here?
Who are we? We are humans. We're spiritual beings. We're made up of the same thing that the universe is made up of. This goes into yoga concepts of we're all union, we're all one, we're all part of the same field. We're the Taoism, and they have their own yoga practice as well, which I've also immensely studied, and it's very beautiful. They say the same thing. We're all Tao. It's the way. We're connected. We're of the same thing. Quantum physics. How does it say this? We're all made up of these atoms, which is quantum physics studies, particularly the realm of things that are small at the nano kind of scale of atomic things, individual atoms, which behave very differently than we're used to of the classical things like this chair, classical physics.
Yeah.
It's not intuitive until we start to, I feel, understand it logically, but importantly, spiritually, intuitively, until we start to embody the universe. We start to embody ourselves through spiritual practices like yoga. We come into our heart, our intuition, we come into our gut, our instinct, and we can do things like study quantum physics to develop the logical mind. But it's really the integration of the three that things like quantum physics will then start to become more intuitive.
Yeah.
Because it's not intuitive if we're just in our heads and we just understand this.
Yeah.
The classical physics.
Yeah.
The way Newtonian physics is another way.
Yeah.
And so Yeah, the quantum physics says that all these atoms, all this matter, it's a particle in a wave. It's energy and it's vibrating and it's moving, and the waveforms that go up from an atom really extend out to infinity, the whole universe. So every atom's waveform is technically interacting
with each other all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
In every part of the universe. I mean, it tails off exponentially, in the sense that the further you get, the less interaction it has. But nonetheless, there's still interaction.
So the bottom line is that time and space plays a factor, but there's still interaction. So everything is interconnected effectively. This, what I find is so interesting because I've been studying quantum physics basically on a hobby now. I am currently studying quantum physics online, nothing to the degree that you're doing, at the University of Georgetown. And my 3 degrees in basically understanding teaching and science has got me so curious to this thing called quantum physics, because I want to know how it all works. I want to understand who I really am and how I can work in alignment with the universal laws. And as you mentioned, you take something like this chair, and of course, add to it or correct me if I'm wrong, but you take something that what I can feel here is, call it cotton fabric, for example. If I can feel this chair, it's cotton, but I put this under a microscope and we dive deeper into the molecule and the atom and the nucleus and sub-nuclear levels of nature's function, and we dive real deep into the nano plane, as you mentioned, we find that it's all energy. Is that correct? Not all of it, but 99 point something or other percent.
Yes, most of it is empty space. But there's energy in that space.
Exactly, and this is interesting. So
empty is in that, not matter, but in that space, it's not empty in the sense it has energy.
Yeah. So being clear, as in, let's say that I take a book, I take something like this, and it looks like paper, it feels like paper.
Yeah.
It sounds like paper, and I can comprehend with my intellectual mind that this is a book. But when we put it under a microscope, it's 99.999% basically pure energy. And as far as I understand, that space, that pure space.
Well, it's 100% energy, because even matter is pure energy.
Oh wow! Now that's a whole nother level of looking at it. Yeah. But I love that.
It's that space that doesn't have matter that has energy, but not necessarily mass. But the mass equals mc squared. Energy is directly related to mass times the speed of light squared. So energy and mass are related. Mass has energy.
Interesting. So if we look at something like this chair, we can say that the absolute 99, let's say something percent of this is pure space, pure energy. Right? And I love the concept. Someone calls that nothingness and someone calls it everythingness, and whatever we believe we will achieve. And so you're talking about this thing called consciousness, and there is something within that space. Where do you as a quantum physicist see that space? How do you see that space, and how does that relate to all of us? What is that? If we're 99% pure energy that is not that of the physical matter, what is that space? Who are we really then?
Right.
Good question, right?
Yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah.
What is that space that in between all matter, the atom, the nucleus, it's like this, imagine if it's this little point. If, say, my fingernail was a nucleus of just a simple atom, like a hydrogen atom or something.
Yeah.
Do you know what the radius of the electron field would be? It would be way out, probably hundreds of meters away, maybe kilometers, something of that scale.
Measurable.
Something huge. So most of the mass of the atom is in this nucleus.
Yes. Right? The physical, and by mass we mean the physical.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
The matter, the thing we can kind of weigh.
Yeah.
If you could even weigh a nucleus.
Of course.
You can using very special techniques and stuff. But that whole field of electrons, which is kind of like planets going around the sun, but more quantum mechanical. It's like a wave. It's a cloud of energy vibrating and waving around and interacting with other vibrating, waving clouds of energy. most of it is empty in the sense that it doesn't have mass, but all that, there's energy in all of that.
So are we then really energy?
Yes, we're 100% energy.
100% energy.
100% energy. All the empty space is energy.
Yeah.
The mass itself is energy.
And it's interesting when we look at that because, I mean, for hundreds of years, scientists have thought that the universe was physical in matter, that the universe was physical. And now when with the studies of quantum physics and we dive deeper, we see that it actually has a deeper level to it. So the scientists are now talking about this thing called the unified field, right? We're talking about this interconnectedness. You're mentioning it as Taoism and that kind of practice. So in order for us to bridge the gap, we talk about consciousness. To be conscious means to be aware, right? I always say, when was the last time you were aware that you were aware of your breath? It's a great question because when I ask myself that question, when was the last time I was aware that I was aware of my breath? I will objectify, as scientists we love to objectify, right? I will then objectify that maybe it was 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months ago. But now I'll ask the question again tomorrow, but instead of saying 2 months ago, I'm now going to say yesterday. So the gap between my own present time conscious awareness and the fact that I was aware that I was aware is shortening over time with a simple practice. So some of our students over time, when I ask the question, when was the last time you were aware, they just say, hey, just before you're about to ask that question. So now we're becoming more aware that we're becoming aware. And so when we talk about this practice of consciousness, or what your evolution has been as a researcher, as a quantum physicist in this incredible field, you embody what I believe is one of the most important practices to be able to live an extraordinary life. Honestly, because I mean, yes, we can have as many degrees as we'd like, and that's great because we can kind of quantify some things and we've studied things extensively. But I think the bottom line here is that everyone wants to live an incredible life. Everyone wants to have, live with an open heart. They want to live in the magic of the moment. They want to be in flow, or at least I would imagine that a lot of people want to live in flow with the universe, to be one with all these universal laws that you've studied for so long. What would be some of the tips that you would give to the average person out there that maybe has a 9 to 5 or has their own business, kind of stressed from time to time, trying to achieve? What are some of the things that you found by studying the laws of the universe and now practicing and embodying this?
Right, so have a regular practice. Particularly keep it simple. Like every day I'm doing a breath practice. It has many names: yogic breathing, primordial breath, embryonic breath. Different kind of systems call it different things. Science might just call it diaphragmatic breathing, but the idea of breathing efficiently, the way we're meant to breathe when we're relaxed. So coming into that every single day until we've actually embodied that so much that we do it without having to meditate on it. It's
unconsciously competent.
It's our natural way of breathing again, because as babies, this is how we are meant to breathe.
Yeah.
Or this is how we do breathe when we come out. Our chest vessels aren't strong enough to breathe. We're breathing from our belly. And then through societal conditionings of stress and anxiety, we start to shallow breathe. We start entering stressful states.
Yeah.
We copy our parents and breathe like them, but we're meant to breathe using the abdominal muscles to support the diaphragm moving up and down, the inhale and exhale.
You've done a lot of work on this, and I know, if it's okay with you, we'll dive into that a little bit later with the work that you're doing with shaking medicine, and I'm really intrigued to learn more about it. When we're talking about breath, would you say that awareness of breath and a regular practice, and when you say practice, are you referring to yoga only? Are there other alternatives out there for the people that might not be, so passionate about yoga, for example, even though I believe it's life-changing, and I know it's been for you as well.
Yeah, well, I'll just touch on real quick on the yoga aspect that people have come to me and they've been like, oh, I tried this yoga class often it's like at a gym or something. I didn't really like it. And so they've never done it again. It's like, well, it's like so many different people teach yoga. If you just get a teacher you don't resonate with, of course you're probably not going to like the experience. So try it again, try different types of yoga. There's so many different types. And keep in mind that our Western culture has had a big influence on it. It's not as it traditionally has been. There's lots of beautiful things about what our Western culture is doing, which is, one thing is making it accessible to people who live in our culture, who just wouldn't like it at all if they went to like an ashram in India and did the monk lifestyle sort of thing.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, keep in mind that it has changed a lot. It's become more mainstream, less traditional. However, there's a lot of benefits in that, and a lot of people will be attracted to that, and it will get people on that path, which I believe is such a beautiful thing about what the West is doing to yoga. Yes, so
it's a practice for the everyday man and woman to be able to, as I say, yoga means union, right? From its original derivation, it means union of the body, mind, and spirit. And for me, it's a practice of consciousness. You know, when I broke my legs and had a lot of issues with the multi-resistant staph infection in and out of hospitals and surgeries for years, it started for me with really simple terms. When I practiced yoga, I was quote unquote sane. I could be present, I could laugh, I could smile, I could have good conversations, I could sleep well at night. I had a great diet because I felt like eating clean when I was moving my body consciously. And for me, when I realized, and I say this now to this day, I'm 37, right? And I say, if I find myself stinking thinking, just go and practice. If I find myself suffering, well, how often have I been practicing over the last 7 days? And very often when I get caught up in the rut and things happen, I find that I'm not practicing as regularly, particularly not daily, as I normally do and should be doing. And therein lies part of the problem, right? So, I mean, you've had a practice for a long time and you're still doing it daily. Do you think that's one of the keys to achieving great things and living in a beautiful state?
Certainly, because it's replenishing my energy on a daily basis. We get energy from more than just food, we get it from breath. If we're breathing properly, we're fueling our whole system with what the Taoists call chi, or the yogis call prana. The West might call it energy. But life force. It's such an important part of of just staying energized and having the energy to be productive, to connect with others, to not be lethargic, to be able to do things. And like, to me, yoga, to kind of go back to the last question of how can we like maybe get stuff out of yoga without it thinking of it as yoga, if that doesn't resonate with you. To me, yoga and other practices like Neidan, I'll touch on in a moment, they are really just teaching us how to be our true selves again. It's like, we don't need to think of it as a religious thing, because it's really not, although some religious people have adopted yoga and applied it to their religion. But from what I understand, it was developed by some like monks living in the Himalayas or something that weren't religious, but I like to say they're spiritual maybe, but
of course, I believe there's a difference between
dogma.
There's no dogma around it. I mean, it's
very scientific in itself. Yoga and like Neidan, which again I'll touch on in a moment. It's very it is scientific, because it's been passed on from teacher to disciple over thousands of years, and every generation it gets refined and they see what works and what doesn't work. So it's a scientific really approach to how to unlock our fullest human potential. And to me, that's what it is.
Yeah, wow.
It's teaching me how to use my breath to cultivate energy. Yeah. The Taoists would say we only have so much life force. It's like our life force, it's like imagine it's like a bank. We want to be putting more in than taking out. And so it means doing our spiritual practices. And speaking of the Taoists, they developed things like traditional Chinese medicine, which, by the way, is not the same as it is now, because the communists came into China, basically genocided most of the Taoists, and then took it and called it something traditional Chinese medicine. But it was a great, they took out most of the beauty of what the Taoists made up and made it very simple and really butchered it, from what I understand.
Yeah.
But the Taoists, so they developed real traditional Chinese medicine, and they were known to live easily over 100 years, a lot of them. Some records, much like in, say, other texts, like there's records of people living hundreds of years, and I mean, don't need to go there, but there are speakings of it, and I believe it's very possible. But they developed traditional Chinese medicine, and in part of their system of Chinese medicine, there's a branch called Neidan, which I mentioned a couple of times.
Yeah, so let's go there. What is this? Tell us about this.
Neidan.
And so we're talking on the concept now of living in a beautiful state, achieving at tremendous levels, and still practicing in alignment with the universal laws of the universe, right? So this is really interesting, because the question is, well, this sounds a bit esoteric and we're going into history and evolution, but the bottom line is that we're still on the topic of how we can achieve this for ourselves and how we can still live in that beautiful state. So
yes.
tell us a little bit more about this, Neidan.